Bernice and Dave Epperson were faced with a dilemma. It was 1983. They were busy raising a family, working, running a volleyball club, and also helping coordinate the large USA Volleyball sanctioned national tournament each year in their home state of California. But despite the success of the tournament in California, a decision was made by the powers that be at USA Volleyball to move the tournament the following year, 1984, away from the West Coast to Rhode Island. The tournament, which featured as many as 70% of its teams from California, was moving from the Golden State to the smallest state, over 3,000 miles away. Let's see. The Olympic Games were coming to LA in 1984, yet the powers that be at USA Volleyball thought moving this highly successful event, an Olympic sport no less, across the country would be a good idea. Bernice and Dave didn't see it that way, so they started their own event, and thus the legendary Volleyball Festival was born. I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to Audio Video Podcast, episode number 53 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hey, can't we all just get along? This pandemic is tough, but together we can overcome it. So, in the words of the Reverend Al Green, let's stay together. This is part one of the story of Bernice and Dave Epperson making the move and creating the event that changed the sport of junior volleyball, the Volleyball Festival. Before we go much further, we need to say hello to the producer for this podcast, which of course is the top-rated video podcast in the CENTINELA ADOBE corridor. She's also producing the SSDL5 slate of shows on YouTube. She's a 2000 AAU Beach Volleyball 10 and under national champion gold medal winner, Marley Rice.
Hi, I'm back.
She's back.
Did you guys miss me? I
I'm
missed
sure.
you. It's been a long time. We've been in quarantine for how long? Man, it feels like 4 years.
Yep.
I have so much to tell you guys. If you guys are listening to this on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, any of those places you're listening, you guys can actually find us on YouTube, youtube.com/SSDL. And that's where you can find all of our video podcasts. And they're actually really kind of cool. So if you're bored at home, which I know most of you are right now, you guys can head on over to our YouTube and find all these video podcasts as well as our live shows.
That's right.
So we have live shows, man, seems like every day, but twice a week. Wednesdays and Fridays, we have our live shows at 5 o'clock at Pacific time. And on Tuesdays, we have a really cool series that I love, that I thought of. Don't let Denny steal the thunder from me. The Never Seen LA, and actually Darren Rice thought of that name. This is where we go to Jonas Never's murals around Los Angeles.
Yep.
They're really freaking awesome, honestly. And if you have a mural that you know about that you want us to go do a little 5-minute mini documentary series on it, hit us up. info@sportstoriespodcast.com and let us know where your favorite mural is. Maybe you'll see it on Never Seen LA.
Those are on Tuesdays. Yep.
What else, Denny, man?
We also distribute on the High School Narrative. And then I've been doing a few people's podcasts lately, right?
We call it Dope, Denny on other podcast episodes.
Very good.
Our Dopes are really cool. So Denny goes on, tells us about the stories that we have on our YouTube.
Yep.
And you've been on Off the Ball podcast, What the Game Means to Me podcast, Brandon Sports Talk.
Heck yeah, those have been fun. So we try to put those up, link those. I put a lot of things on my Twitter account.
Totally.
At Sports Stories DL, you can always get the information there. I have a Karch and St. John running poll there. It's been pushed to Game 7 of a competition between the two for King of the Beach. A bunch of questions that don't have anything to do with their beach volleyball playing ability. But you should check me out there. Also did like a tribute to Gale Sayers when he died. We have clips from our live show and more.
We have so much cool stuff. And if you want to find any of our links, you can go to our website, sportsstoriesdl.com or sportsstoriespodcast.com. We're both of those. You can find all of our links, all of our social media links, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and the link to our YouTube live shows.
This, our video podcast episode, is what we started with, and it's what we tend to be most proud of. We wanted to first, in this particular episode, in these two episodes, thanks Roger Gowdy of the Amateur Athletic Union. He's the president and chief executive officer. He's also the national volleyball chair for the AAU. He wanted the story of the Eppersons to be told. So Marley and I hopped on a plane for Houston, and we sat down with the one and only Dave Epperson. Now, Dave was sure to acknowledge the instrumental work of his wife, Bernice, who was not available for the interview. We also want to send out special thanks to Brian Kelly for coordinating the visit and for sitting in on the interview. You know, we were so fortunate to hear the story about the development of a unique format, along with the fun and groundbreaking ways to bring the entire community of volleyball together through a celebration that is the Volleyball Festival. It was all devised by the Epperson family out of love of sport and family. The Volleyball Festival broke ground not only in volleyball, but in the world of youth sports. We've made best efforts for you to hear this interview. The audio we had captured via the headphones was lost due to a software problem. But thankfully, audio specialist Chris Allport was able to put together the interview from the surrounding cameras. Much thanks to you, Chris Allport. And our most heartfelt thanks go out to Dave Epperson for allowing us to come into his home for what we will release as a two-part interview. In this part one, we get to know Dave's background. He was a standout athlete in his youth, attending Stanford University and competing in basketball against the likes of Bill Russell and Casey Jones. He even played some 2-on-2 volleyball back in those days. This guy, a true pioneer. Dave will also tell us about the beginnings of his and Bernice's venture into club volleyball, where they changed the paradigm and made youth sports better. From the Lone Star State in the city named after Samuel Houston, we're proud to bring you part one with Dave Epperson. Please note, this interview was recorded on December 17th of 2019.
Okay, very good. All right. So Dave, you started to tell me a little bit about the genesis of the festival, but I'm interested also in your backstory. Now, were you born in Northern California?
Yes, I was.
Uh-huh.
I went to Stanford.
Oh, really?
What
What about
basketball at Stanford?
Is that right? Now, what about elementary school? Did you were you in which area were you in?
Near Sacramento.
Near Sacramento? Is that where you got involved in sports?
Yes. Backyard sports.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Who got you going?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember who got you started in playing athletics and so forth?
I don't think so. It was a neighborhood gang
Yeah.
that got us all involved.
Oh, nice.
We always had something going.
What high school did you go to?
To Woodland High School, which is in a small town. Woodland. It's now almost a suburb of Sacramento. It's grown. It's about 60,000 people, and it was about 5,000 when I was in high school.
Oh, is that right? And you played basketball there?
Yes, I did.
Any other sports?
I went to the state championship as a high jumper.
Is that right? All right. And so did Stanford recruit you, or did you recruit Stanford?
No. Stanford recruited me.
Is that right?
Berkeley and Stanford both recruited me, and I chose Stanford.
What made you go in that direction?
Well, I learned very early that the academic program there was more demanding, and even though I wasn't prepared for it, it would be a good thing for me to have as a part of my credentials for the rest of my life.
Is that right? Now, so who was coach at Stanford in those days for basketball?
Well, when I arrived, Everett Dean, who was just finishing his career, who had been coaching at the University of Indiana before he came to Stanford, was the head coach, and then Bob Burnett was his freshman coach, and he coached me as a freshman. And then he became my varsity coach for the next 3 years.
Was this about the time Pete Newell was up in that area?
It was before Pete Newell. Yeah.
Okay. And what would you play in basketball?
Well, in that time, a 6'6" guy could be a center.
Sure, that's right.
Not anymore. He has to be a point guard these days.
That's right. Wow, fantastic. And what was it about athletics that you learned then? You know, at that younger age.
Did I?
Yeah, like what did you take from athletics that would serve you later?
Well, I think the perseverance that is required in order to develop your skills, and for me, that was not a hard thing to do because I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I played whenever I had a chance. We'd play any place we could, on concrete or asphalt or whatever.
You played against a couple of prominent athletes as well, right?
Well, I did at Stanford. Bill Russell and Casey Jones were on the University of San Francisco team, and they won the national championship 2 years in a row.
I think like 59 or something like that, or no, maybe.
Bill Russell graduated in 56, and so it would have been 55, 56, but he was a freshman, I think, the year that I played against him.
You just were sharing a little bit about John Wooden. Now he would have been coaching down at UCLA.
Yeah, and they really made it difficult for us.
Yeah.
We had a lot of frustration down there.
And was Stanford still the Indians at this point?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Wow. So and then what'd you study at Stanford?
In psychology, I studied psychology.
So you went right into that.
Yes, which is what I got my master's and my PhD in.
And then you shared with me that you served as well.
Yes, in Korea.
And so that was after Stanford?
Yes, I went through ROTC at Stanford. And my obligation was a 2-year tour, and I got sent to Korea.
What did any how did that serve you in Korea? Like, did you learn a different type of discipline or anything?
No, actually, I had some really good assignments. I was a special services officer, but mainly they recruited me when I first arrived to play on a basketball team. So I was on a team that was there to entertain former college players that played basketball around the area, and then we went to Korea and to Japan. We went over to Japan and competed against the military teams over there.
Oh, excellent! And once you returned, did you go back to school at this point, or did you start your practice?
No, I just had a bachelor's degree, and I got a master's degree while I was teaching school in the Sacramento schools.
Now, I understand. I think your family had been. I think I read somewhere they were homesteaders since.
Yeah, my great grandparents came in 1853 and settled in. Each brother got 160 acres, and so we had a 320 acres spread there that stayed in the family for a while.
Wow! So you were ingrained in Northern California then.
Yes.
What now? Did you take? Were you a professor? I think I saw at Illinois. Or was that your first job?
My first job was at UC Santa Barbara. That was my first assignment there, and there I was an assistant dean my final year there. And then I went back to the University of Illinois and was the department head, and eventually the associate provost for the university system, and then they sent me up to be the dean of education at the Chicago campus, and then I went from there to Northwestern University, where I was a professor and administrator.
See a lot of similarities between Northwestern and Stanford?
Yes, yeah, and they're really very good places to work because you have a lot more flexibility than you do in a state university, where you have all the layers of organization that you have to go through if you want any new programming.
Yeah. Now I take it somewhere along the way you met Bernice.
When we were 14.
Is that right?
We've been. This is our 74th year to New Year's together.
Wow, that's something else. That sounds like Coach Wood.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right along the same lines. And so while you're making these moves, you're raising a family at the same point?
We didn't raise a family until we'd been married for 13 years.
Okay.
Hannah, Brian's wife, was born, and that was when we were at Illinois, at the University of Illinois.
The University of Illinois, Champaign.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like that area?
Very much so. very much so. University towns are really a great place for people, for raising a family. Really wonderful.
When did you first notice the sport of volleyball? Was it
When
your daughters?
Yes, it was with my daughters. Well, actually, when I was at Stanford, we played two-man volleyball. All of the living units played two-man volleyball, and I played, but I didn't know how to play. And a lot of Southern California kids, they came and they knew how to play, and so I didn't really develop my skills there very much. I would have been perfect candidate for the team. We didn't have a team at Stanford. We didn't have a volleyball team. Although George Yardley was just preceded me there, and George Yardley played on the USAB team.
Sure did.
It was the USVBA in those days. He
Tremendous
was
player.
a national. He was an All-American and in both volleyball and basketball, like Erickson
Like
was.
Keith
Like Erickson
Yeah.
was at
That's something
UCLA.
else. Now, tell me a little bit about that 2-on-2 volleyball, because that's really interesting. I know like the genesis of it in Southern California had to do with they were setting up a 6-on-6 beach game, but only 4 people showed up. Hey, was it just because of the numbers? So you
I don't know.
2-on-2, or?
I think they just imported it from Southern California. It had been going on for some time before it came to Stanford. And then all of the living units, all the fraternities and all of the living units had courts in their backyard.
Cement courts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Asphalt courts.
Like it would be on the basketball court.
Right.
Wow, that's really cool. So that's where you first you understood that there was like volleyball and what the rules were. And those kind of
Right.
things.
But the power volleyball, we called it power volleyball, which was what we played there. They didn't have they really didn't play that game in those days.
Okay.
But it was a much more backyard kind of thing, except for at the USVBA tournaments, the national championships, which they continue to have. They still have those tournaments for adults.
Wow. Okay, so you got introduced to it there. Then when you're out in Illinois, your daughter was born about what year?
66.
Okay.
She was born in 66, and then the other one was born in 68.
And something pulled you back out west?
Yeah, the job.
Good for you.
No, actually, my the thing that really took me back home was my father had a massive stroke and had aphasia, and I was on sabbatical, and so I went out there to help him, and so I helped him. I took over the management of his assets there. He had an industrial park and also an automobile agency. And so I helped put those things into order before I moved. We moved to Southern California. One of the reasons we moved, our daughters got involved with volleyball and they wanted to learn how to play the game, and they figured that the quality of play was better in Southern California.
That's still happening today.
Yes, it is.
But now they learned how to play in Illinois a little bit? Or they learned the rules?
No, they didn't. They were babies. They were young.
Oh, so but they came out.
They didn't learn volley. They didn't. They both played basketball before they played volleyball.
Yeah.
But they were starting a club there in town, so I decided I wanted to get behind the sport.
What part of town?
In Davis.
Okay.
We lived in Davis at that time, near the university.
I see.
And they were part of the Davis volleyball club.
And so here you are, you're driving them over to practice.
Right.
And
And raising funds.
and raise because they got to get out to the nest. Now, is this about the time of Title IX?
No, Title IX was not until, I think I lost.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Title IX was not until 1972.
Okay.
And then when the girls, but they got started about 1978 or 79.
I see.
And so there was already some movement, but it was very sluggish during the first years of Title IX. But then it started to take off, and at that point, I thought I wanted to kind of throw my efforts behind that venture, and so that was one of the reasons that Bernice and I got involved in forming a club. I mean, helping form the club, and in working with Gary Kohlberg at the national championships.
When Title IX passed in '72, were you aware of it? Because I wasn't sure. Like I think it was passed for a different reason besides athletics, but then it was used for, moving forward. Women
Yeah, I was
athletics.
very much aware. I was politically aware in those states. So
Yeah. So you saw that.
but it didn't register with me as much as because we didn't. My wife had no experience with sports when she was growing up, and I said, if we have daughters, I would like them to get involved. But that was about the extent of it.
Yeah, it sure has benefited women's athletics on so many levels.
There's no question.
No question about it. So your girls are playing,
Right?
and they're enjoying it.
Very much so.
And you got to get where to Omaha, I think.
That was the first one that they had to go to Omaha.
And so you got to figure this out.
Right. Yeah. We had to raise the money to get them to Omaha.
How'd you do that?
That was the first thing. Well, we had the car wash. We did the usual stuff.
I love it.
The usual
That's
stuff.
awesome.
And then, but by the time we got them ready for going to back to Chicago for the AAU tournament, one of the things that what I was able to do, there was a very wealthy farmer in the area, and I got acquainted with him, and he also owned a casino in Las Vegas, Maxim's.
Okay.
And so I approached him and I said, I've got about $3,000 put together now for us to get going, but I need another $3,000 to get the team there. And I said, well, put Maxim on our uniforms. And he said, fine.
You're thinking, man.
So he wrote out a check for $3,000.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you were sponsored by a casino.
Right.
That's kind of like Chico's bail bond sponsored the Bad News Bears.
Right.
Right. That's all right. I mean, that's very creative.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial. And now back to our interview.
So you got your team out there. Now, did you have to qualify for that, or was that
No, there was no qualification. It was an all-comers. In those days, there were so few teams.
Mhm.
That was not an issue.
Where did you see the best teams from besides Southern California?
The Chicago area. They had some pretty good teams. Chicago has had a long history of high quality, mostly elite programs, not very much for the ordinary athlete. But that sports performance program where they went on and recruited all the best players from the high schools in the whole area, and that's a big area. So.
That's a big area. When did you get involved in coaching at all?
Not in volleyball at all. I coached in junior high school when I was getting ready to get my master's degree, and I coached over in Korea, both basketball and track and field.
But you see some similarities in that they're court sport and some of the same skills that are required.
Right, exactly.
So you saw that in your girls.
Right.
Now, how many? I'm always kind of curious about those days. How many events, like how many tournaments do they even have for programming on the West Coast?
On the West Coast, in Northern California, and Southern California, they had a league, and you could enter, any teams could come and play in the league, and there were no restrictions on the quality or anything. And John Dunning, who was at Stanford and at UOP before that, he was coaching the high school team. And he had been a basketball player. And so he and I hit it off. And I had started a relationship with him back in about '78. And then, of course, I followed his career. And he ended up at my alma mater and won 2 national championships there. And he won championships at UOP before he came there.
He sure did. So your girls in the club gets to go out to Omaha.
Right.
And were you telling me before when you come in second to sport performance?
No. That was at Chicago.
How did you do in that Omaha tournament?
The girls didn't do. I mean, we were just a country club. I mean,
Okay.
club from the country.
But you got recognized. You and your wife got recognized because you were able to get your team out there.
Well, that was one of the reasons, and the other one was that we volunteered at the university to help promote their women's basketball program, and we devoted ourselves to trying to increase the size of the fan size there. They had usually about 50 people come in for the women's game, and then by the time the men's game came on, there were maybe 1,000 people there. So we said that that's got to be improved. So we went out and distributed tickets. We got the athletic director to give us tickets, and we distributed tickets to high schools and junior high schools in the area. And we went from about 50 fans to actually as many as 1,000 by the time we finished working. That was what connected us with Gary Colbert, who was also an employee of the university. And
In
in
Nebraska.
No. Gary Colbert was at the University of California at Davis. He's the founder of the national championships.
Okay. When you're out in Omaha, and by the way, that Nebraska fan base is something else.
Isn't that wonderful?
Did they host a tournament at the university there, or where did they host that tournament? Do you remember?
You mean the tournament that AAU did? Yeah, at a small college. Yeah.
Once you spent a couple of years going to those, somebody came to you to say, "Hey, we'd like to see you run something out your way."
Wink Davenport came, the head commissioner of Southern California, and he said, Gary Colbert decided he would have, in Rhode Island, he would have the national championship. Well, that meant that the majority of California teams couldn't get there. I mean, it was too expensive to get there. So he'd like to have something on the West Coast that would be able to serve those people. So that's when he recruited me to Bernice to do that.
And that's 1984.
Yeah, that's right. And Bernice, because the fact that she was an accountant and she helped get the USDBA out of debt when she went to work for them, they were impressed that so my wife gave me a little boost to get my agenda.
Get you moving a little bit. Now, what'd you do? How did you get this going? So this is it. This is it. Like, this is when it begins.
Right.
The boom.
Well, I recruited Dave DeGroot, who was he actually was played volleyball in Southern California, and he was as assistant coach San Jose State. And he and his wife were assistant coaches there. And so I recruited them I didn't know enough about volleyball to be able to have any credibility to run a tournament, so I got him to work with me.
Okay.
But then I was the one that created the format, with the festival format.
And you got that idea because you went to a national tournament and somebody only got a couple games.
That's right. I was at the AAUs. Yeah, the AAU event. They only got a couple of matches, and they spent all that money to get there. And so I thought,
So you thought,
you know, if they could get at that time, kids really needed to play, because the sport, the game teaches the game.
sure.
And if they don't have enough experience, then they're not going to get much better. So that was the driving force that created that format, and it inspired me to continue to do it.
Tell me about developing that format. So you figured certain teams that are eliminated this day are going to drop to this bracket to this bracket.
That's
so forth.
exactly how.
Did you learn that from any kind of basketball tournaments
No,
or anything? You just came up with it.
Yeah. No, I had never seen a tournament like that.
Something else.
But I had the goal, and that was what I needed, was the goal of getting those matches and try to make. The first year I didn't do a very good job, and we tried to make transitions from one phase to the next during the event, and that didn't work out very well. I mean, people were sitting unattended to for a period of time. So the next year I was able to reformulate that and make it possible for people to play a day's worth of competition and then move on to the next day and the next day.
All progress requires change.
Right, and then what we did, we had 3 days of competition to start with, and then we had a day off, and that was for clinics that we ran for the coaches, and we ran some special events for the officials. We tried to get apprentice coaches and apprentice referees involved in the event so that they could improve their skills, so that we could have more tournaments and we could serve more kids that way. I mean, I was as interested in the ordinary athlete as I was in the elite athletes, whereas most of the associations were mainly interested in the elite athletes, and they formulated their tournaments in order for the cream to rise to the top. And we didn't do that. I mean, we accommodated those people, but we were able to continue. Our bottom category, our division that we had divisions of 4 teams in the final day, and we called that the character division, because it took a lot of character. Because by the time they got there, they had lost all of their matches. Now, two of those teams, were going to have their first win. And one team was going to win 2 matches. So the winner of that division had 2 wins.
Yeah.
Maybe they had 10 losses.
Maybe it's just excited over that.
And they were. And when they go back on the airplane, they would say, they would come with their trophies.
That's right.
We had trophies for all of them, and they were all the same trophies, so people wouldn't know whether they
come back with that.
Yeah, exactly.
I find this interesting. You played at elite level yourself, but you seem to have this respect across the board for athletes.
Yes, I do.
That extended both genders, all the way up and down,
Right.
and you must have also developed some goodwill with the parents, the administrators that were coming to your event in order to try these new innovations and fail perhaps the first time, but in knowing where you wanted to get with them.
Yeah, well, you have to remember that I came to the sport as a parent, so I always had the parent in mind whenever we made any kind of when we orchestrated a large opening ceremony. The opening ceremony was not only for the athletes but for the parents, so that we could promote the sport through the opening ceremony, and we did that for years.
And you got that idea maybe from the Olympics or something?
Yeah,
Nobody else was doing that in volleyball.
No, they didn't.
So you brought that to volleyball
And
as well,
it
right?
was a really expensive undertaking. And at that time, though, it was really important to promote the sport. It was really important.
Well, tell me how you coordinated that, because did all the teams arrive on the same day?
Yes. They did. And then they would all participate. They would all participate, and then we had the Grand March, and when we were in arenas. Why we have them come into the arena and march around, and you know,
Nice.
we try to make it as much like an Olympic event as possible.
The growth of the event. So your first year in '84, do you remember about how many teams you had?
Yeah, about 150 boys and girls.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
So your first one out of the gate.
First year, yeah.
And then
But we actually only had, I think, about maybe 80 girls teams.
okay.
And then we took it over to Berkeley the next year. And we did both the boys and the girls. And we learned that the girls really came there because they had been working in the clubs and were developing their skills, whereas the boys were pickup teams. And they didn't come with the same kind of seriousness that the girls did. And it was kind of a disrupting effect having the boys there. So the next year, the third year, we dropped the boys and we kept focused on the women.
When did you start to see a lot of out-of-state teams come?
Well, they came. Some out-of-state teams came the very first year.
Wow, that's impressive.
Oregon, and Washington. We actually had some teams from. Early on, we had teams from New York. We had teams from.
Right away, huh?
Yeah.
They wanted to come out west
Well,
and see
yeah.
what you got going there.
They did. They wanted to test themselves against the teams out west, and we had some really good teams. John Dunning had a really good team in Northern California. They won the championship. Their high school team won the state championship too.
You also developed AM and PM waves,
Right.
and that was to accommodate the growth.
No, it was an administrative move to try to get as many teams as we possibly could into the event, and so that we could coordinate the play. It was more of an administrative move.
That allowed for you to take in more teams.
Right.
Well, it also provided a better experience for the parents as well. They didn't have to sit around in the gym the whole day.
The whole time.
Yeah. See, we were focused on the parents because we were focused on the parents. They were able to come and spend a half a day at the gym rather than a full day. In the first years, they had to spend a full day
Sure.
because
remember those days.
of the format.
There's something else that I heard. You started with the 3-ball rotation. For
to speed up the games.
And then that's
Because
something
in
that's
those
become
days,
standard.
the scoring system was not very amenable to the format that we had. Now the new rules, with a point on every serve, it makes it a lot more easy. It makes it easier for us to administer.
Yeah, you can estimate the time a little bit.
Right. Yes.
A little more clearly. Although some of the drama the drama of the side-out game was an awful lot of fun when it come down towards the end,
Yeah.
right? To see who was the big side-out hitters.
But for purposes of getting to the ordinary athlete and for getting their parents to see their children play, this new format this new rules are much better for them.
Thanks for watching and listening. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is produced by me, Marley Rice, and Christine Jinbo, and edited by bad boy Bobby McCall. Original music courtesy of Lennon Music Production, and original images courtesy of Ciena Lennon Photography. A big thank you to all of our contributors of the show. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is a production of Sports Stories Inc. and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you watch and listen. Make sure you press that subscribe button, give us a review, leave a comment. It will really help us grow the show. And you know what else will help us grow the show? Head on over to patreon.com/Denny Lennon to get some never-before-seen videos, pictures, interviews, and so much more. We are all over social media and constantly sending out clips on Facebook, conducting fun polls on Twitter, going live on Instagram, and more. To find all of our social media links, head on over to sportsstoriespodcast.com. SSDL proudly supports the My Stuff Bags Foundation and the Heroes Movement. Links to how you can support and help these foundations can be found on our website. We also want to give a big thank you to all of our partners of the show. So, as Coach Lennon would say, any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me, Marley, at info@sportsstoriespodcast.com. We want to thank all of our followers and listeners, and we will see you next time.
Come as you are, as you were, we have no enemies. Take your time, hurry up, the choice is yours, don't be late. Take a rest as a friend. Sports stories, sports stories, sports stories.
Check it out, Buck.